Previously on the Game On podcast.
Now, for people out there who don't really know Winnie and probably, hopefully getting to know a little bit more compassion just listening to this side of things, I compared John very much to Ian Chappell as a leader, and that Winnie is also the leader. He always knows everything what's still going on at the parade. John still knows everything. The care and compassion he has for everyone. Someone falls down the crack, one of Winnie's favourite sayings, or there's a player set, whatever. Winnie's even from Perth. He's contacting us, hey, blah, 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 can you go and do that? And unique leadership in Jonathan Francis Winnie.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
And my name's Pete. I'm joined once again by Malcolm. Mate, last week, Jonathan Wynn, what a fantastic story about how he just is continually giving back to the Nord Football Club.
I think people there from listening from that, there's been a lot of really good feedback around the traps. They can probably understand why Winnie was my first footy hero. It's probably perfectly nails it.
And the interview was fantastic. We got great insight into not only his career, but what he's been doing since. And, wow, I can see why he's your number one man, mate.
Yep.
Around the grounds.
Today we're going to have a little bit of a look at the Rugby World Cup. The AFLW season is coming to a big end, and some tennis. But to kick off today, mate, cricket.
Yeah, the Adelaide Strikers are currently playing in a pretty evenly poised final tonight, where Brisbane batted first, 154. The Strikers a couple of minutes ago, 2 for 43 off 8. But McGrath is out, so you probably... I've got to be honest, you're probably backing Brisbane at that stage. But, yeah, evenly poised. We need Laura Wolfhart to go on with it and actually get a big score. Look, there's been a shield game in Adelaide this week, Pete.
Yep.
Now, I want to have a real crack at the SACA out of this. The SACA have made a decision. They are charging people $10 to get in, supposedly to give better value to the membership. There were 38 people at Adelaide Oval yesterday. Wasn't exactly a hard job to count everyone.
Yep.
Now, that is costing them money. Now, I know of quite a number of pensioners who are now no longer going, because it's not only the $10 to get in, it's $17 for the car park.
Yep.
And to my knowledge, I've spoken to people from 3 different states at various shield games. We're the only state charging. I'd love the SACA to actually just be honest and come and go, no, the move hasn't worked. It's back to free admission.
We talked about that in a few episodes ago about the same scenario. I'm sure there would have been some sort of complaint put in by now that they might be listening to that, not only we're bringing up, but I'm sure there's other people jumping up and down about it as well.
Sporting an organisation to actually admit they've made a mistake doesn't happen too often.
No, but they can easily fix it.
Of course they can.
That's the thing. And if they can get a few more people there, well, then it's more beneficial for everybody involved.
I will say the car park is the Adelaide City Council.
Yep.
So that's, and I will say the great man Les Burdett was ropeable when that happened years ago.
Yep.
So that's not their fault, but let's do it. So you've paid to get in, keep your parking ticket as well. That includes entrance.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
There are other ways of doing it for sure. Obviously, the BBL team, we're hoping we're going to get off to a good start, but, a little bit tight. The WBBL.
Oh, look, Megan Schutt the other night, 6 for 19 versus Sydney Thunder to get us to the second spot in the home final.
Yes.
And I admit I went there just briefly. Very unusual to go to a cricket game for 4 overs and then leave tonight before we've done the show.
Yes.
Great numbers there. There was about over 1,000 people there, and I did actually make the comment to Tim Nielsen, gee, a few more people in the Shield game. Yeah. So
growing in popularity, the WBBL, and it's fantastic that they're getting a good crowd. And, 1,000 people at Karen Rolton Oval.
it was a great atmosphere.
It's a great atmosphere. Exactly right.
Pete, AFL, Tasmania's bid end of the competition.
Yeah.
Of course, we've got the draft in a week.
We do. Mate, Tasmania have taken another step closer. They've got an in-principle agreement, which has been obviously plastered all over the news. I think it's great for the competition that Tasmania are getting a team. I suppose we'd like to see the NT get one, and then we've got a truly national competition going. But it's great that they've got an in-principle agreement that it's going to happen. Yeah,
certainly some general, obviously, progression. I admit I would much rather have seen a side relocate. And I understand where Tasmania said, no, we want our own side. But let's also remember, South Melbourne actually relocated to Sydney. Does anyone actually remember that's South Melbourne?
Yep.
It's Sydney now.
Yep.
I still think that would have happened in time. It's not a true national competition with 10 sides in Victoria.
Yep.
It's reality. It's an extended VFL.
VFL, yep. Look, I think Tasmania will be a great addition. And does that open up ideas for fixturing? With, say, 19, 20 teams, does that mean we go to almost like a conference style
I think
system?
we're getting towards that stage, well and truly. So we just have to wait and see what happens.
It would even things up. Say you have 5 in a group, you play each other twice, a home and away, and then a game crossover at some stage, and then obviously finals as well, which I think would be fantastic as well. And then the best youngsters, mate, coming up for the national draft. Adelaide have picked 46, 56 and 59. Father-son.
So that's why they've gone further back, because they don't have to do that to get young Jim Michaelinis to get Max, son of Piano, who's already got a fair bit of mention earlier on from Marty Leslie. Yes.
He certainly did. And obviously Matthias Filippo, are the Crows still a chance at this late stage?
No, is my understanding. I know they've been trying to throw things around, but no. Son of Sam, Uncle Peter.
Yep.
So the big footy grassland, West Torrens heartland. Tyus is a confident kid, but I'm just glad to hear a kid who's actually just honest. No,
yep.
I'm the player that
yep.
I'm going to back myself.
And whatever club I end up at, I want to stay there.
Yeah.
Which is really, really, really good as well. Across the road to Port Adelaide, picked 33 and 60. No real surprises there.
No, well, they've already done there effectively. Yeah. They've done the trading this year and bought in, Horn Francis and Rioli. So they've sort of done.
They've done their homework already.
Yeah.
Obviously, North Melbourne going to feature prominently with 2, 3, 23, 40 and 70. They've had some big swaps in the last week or two as well. It's going to be a fascinating watch, this draft period, sorry.
Yeah, so they've traded a few things down because their last selection is going to be Boomer Harvey's son. So that qualifies under that system, which is way too complicated to try and understand, let alone explain. Yeah, so a few things there. It's normally me.
Yeah, it was me.
There, Pete. Yeah,
it was me tonight.
I'm quite happy that it was you instead of me.
Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, so obviously the draft coming up on November the 28th and 29th should be an absolute cracker, and we'll report back on who gets picked up and go from there. Mate, soccer, it's World Cup time.
Yeah, I admit I found it a bit bizarre, the reaction to Australia losing 4-1 to France. Like, France, arguably the best side in the world, and we're way down. It wasn't an unexpected scoreline, but the way there's been some reaction, let's be honest, it's France. It's sort of really not much different than, say, Norwood playing or Paynham playing Geelong. In the difference there. So 4-1, I don't think was a surprise scoreline whatsoever.
Well, I didn't get up for the beginning of the game. I did flip it on as I was sort of getting ready for work, like most people. They were 2-1 down, and I'm like, at 65-minute mark, I think it was, and obviously Goodwin, who we were only talking about with Mary a few weeks ago, that saying, we're hoping he gets into the squad, and he gets in, he scores a goal, and all of a sudden we're 1-0 up, and then 2-1 down, and I'm like, that's actually not a bad result. We might have broken even. Well, by the time I'd finished getting ready and was off to my first job, 4-1, and they're going absolutely bonkers. It's bad call, bad decisions, try to overpossess the ball. It didn't make sense to me. And look, we're playing the reigning champions.
Yeah, I thought it's it's been a way overreaction personally.
Absolutely. Mate, Adelaide United, the women are playing at the moment. Obviously, the men are in a little bit of a pause worldwide, but the women have got their season off to a good start. They won 1-0.
Good start. As we said, any South Australian sides out there. And look, South Australia today have won Div 1 and Div 2 in the veterans cricket.
Yes.
So we will get one of the boys on probably hopefully next week. Yep. I admit I was with them earlier. I don't reckon they would have scrubbed up too well on radio by now. So yes.
Might have been a few expletives we'd had to block out, but no, absolutely fantastic for the women's team. And like I said, we'll get behind any team that's doing really, really well at the moment and give them our full support.
I do want to do a brief, serious thing. Look, massive condolences to Joe Richardson, Adelaide Uni Footy Club, legendary physio, been around for a long time, involved with the club for 25 plus years. Yeah, lost her battle to cancer last night. Fought it pretty hard for the last couple of years, and massively respected. And it's certainly been a lot of messages flying around, and condolences to the Richardson family, and all the best.
Absolutely, condolences from us as well, mate. Unfortunately, those things are never easy, and we send out our gratitude to them as well. All right, mate, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to have a little bit of a look at the AFLW coming up after the break, mate.
Has there ever been anything that has lightened up your day? Whether it was someone who complimented you or maybe you got a promotion at work, these all make you feel happiness. But if you're looking for more to lighten up your day, then you should book our mobile coffee service. We are always dedicated to one thing: service. We appeal to all sorts of people, from commuters on their way to work or our regular workplace coffee stops. And best of all, we visit you. Whether it's our top quality and aromatic coffee or our mouth-watering selection of cakes and food, there will always be something for you to enjoy. Servicing Adelaide's metro area. Why not book in a stop today? Find us on Facebook and send us a message. Tour Coffee and Catering. We deliver your daily caffeine fix.
Welcome back to the Game On podcast.
Rugby, some great results this week.
Yeah, the Rugby World Cup for the men's and the women's was played over in England late last week. Australia defeats Samoa 30-10. The women's team 54-4. The Samoans almost got a hero's welcome coming back home. You'd actually thought they'd won it if you were seeing the side-by-side cameras of the reactions of the teams. Their fans absolutely loved it, and look, Australia was a little too dominant in the end, but what I want to talk about was probably the safety of the ground. There was in the try area of each end, there was 1.5 meters of synthetic grass tucked up against normal grass.
Yeah, weird. We sort of take that in. We question grounds where synthetic grass comes into play occasionally,
Absolutely.
the test grounds, and query that. But that was sort of another step up in bizarreness.
Well, you just see players pulling back, going to the line. They're not following through and trying to avoid it as much as possible. And there was a few occasions where almost the defender almost hands up and lets him through because he knows that if he hits him any harder, he's going to end up into the fence because it was so close. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Moving on, AFLW
grand
final this weekend, Melbourne and Brisbane.
Yeah, it's gone to script, the expected script. Adelaide were reasonable. Look, I think probably it did show with Port coming in that they didn't get those talented youth Ewings, and who won the Rising Star goes to Port, which would have been in Adelaide. So, yeah, look, that's evened it up. Adelaide have been the dominant side.
Yep.
Came in. Look, I'm not a fan of the switch seasons. I've been very upfront about that.
Yes.
So I can't be accused of holding back. But a successful result overall.
I think, Adelaide have been around the mark. They probably showed losing those players that they did lose. They're still around the mark.
Yeah.
Obviously, Brisbane had it a little bit the year before, I think, with Gold Coast coming in. So, it sort of came in peaks and troughs. It's sort of done that way. Melbourne have been around the mark as well. Like you said, I think it has gone to script. The ground conditions there also with a brand new ground up in Brisbane.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. We'll wait and see. let's not make a prediction on it. Let's just wait and
No,
see.
I mean, the facility looks fantastic.
Yeah,
Probably just needed another month or so. But, hey, let's see how it goes. And hopefully, they sold out in an hour or less than an hour. And they're still trying to get more people in, which is fantastic for the game as well.
Yeah. 4 representatives in the All-Australian side. Look, I think overall, pretty successful year. Port, probably a little disappointing they didn't get a couple more wins. But again, first year.
Yep. Still building.
Yep.
I think they're doing a lot of the right things that you'd want for a brand new franchise to the competition as well.
Now tennis, some huge results.
The women's last week get through to the Billie Jean Cup, or the formerly Fed Cup final. The boys have gone, you know what, we're going to have a red hot dip here as well, and they win 2 rubbers to 0 against the Netherlands, which means a semi-final against Croatia at this stage. Yeah,
and so Jordan Thompson and Alex Dumoulin get the job done. Leighton's coach. Yeah, so
I think it's all coming together really, really nicely. Tougher opponents in Croatia or Spain, but at this stage it looks like Croatia. Matches is played on Friday afternoon or Friday night our time. I think we're a fair chance, to be honest with you.
Oh, look, it's just, at least it's progression. Look, it's not like the old Davis Cup where we played America. I'm showing my age. Newcombe, Laver, etc. They were the great days.
Yes.
But this one, it's a different style, so it's a little bit harder to follow.
Yes,
like it's probably only sports tennis nuts are really
probably
following it as
well. It's gone from the traditional home and away rubbers to a one central location, which is, I think, with the tour the way that it's designed, it's probably good to have everybody rather than jet packing back here, there, and everywhere. I sort of get that. I think you have all the players that are all in one area at one time. They can knock it over in a week and a half. I think it's a good thing. But
I think it's probably just those older ones amongst us who are probably just not used to it yet. So I've sort of dismissed it a bit, not buying into it. So look, let's be honest. Australia ends up being around the mark, and anything we do tend to follow it. So
And look, again, another semi-final for a Davis Cup. The swings and roundabouts in tennis as well. There's a lot of countries that used to dominate that are having their time out of the spotlight, and some others are coming in as well. So we'll watch that one with interest, and next week, hopefully, we're sitting here with a Davis Cup win under our belt.
Yeah.
We'll see how we go. All right, mate, we're going to take another quick break. Coming up after the break, we've got Martin Leslie from the Port Adelaide Footy Club, but also from the Brisbane Bears. The interview is fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, hang around for it.
Has there ever been anything that has lightened up your day? Whether it was someone who complimented you, or maybe you got a promotion at work, these all make you feel happiness. But if you're looking for more to lighten up your day, then you should book our mobile coffee service. We are always dedicated to one thing: service. We appeal to all sorts of people, from commuters on their way to work or our regular workplace coffee stops. And best of all, we visit you. Whether it's our top quality and aromatic coffee or our mouth-watering selection of cakes and food, there will always be something for you to enjoy. Servicing Adelaide's metro area. Why not book in a stop today? Find us on Facebook and send us a message. Tour Coffee and Catering. We deliver your daily caffeine fix.
Welcome back to the Game On podcast. 5 good minutes in the clubhouse.
Welcome to 5 good minutes in the clubhouse today. Even though it is 5 minutes, we do go a little bit longer, but we have some very special guests, and we love to hear them talk about their career. We might change this to past players and past legends, I reckon, over the next couple of weeks. But today's special guest, Martin Leslie, formerly from the Port Adelaide Footy Club, heading up to the Brisbane Bears. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome, Marty. So, traditional Port Adelaide, growing up in the area, Semaphore, Largs Bay, etc.?
Yeah, definitely sort of grounded down that way. Born at Semaphore, was born there at this Lefevre Hospital, and then we lived a year at Semaphore, and then we moved a long way away to Largs Bay, and then another long way away to Largs North. So mum passed away when I was 16, and my sisters were a bit older, and Dad and I decided to move to Alberton because he was from Rosewater, which is next door. So, so pretty much lived and breathed down there, guys. For the first 20-odd years.
Port Adelaide heartland out there, that's for sure.
You could have nearly walked with each move, not having to worry about driving each move, Marty.
Well, he would have sort of whacked them on and all our stuff in a shopping trolley and, down the road.
Well, you're lucky at Port Adelaide it didn't get pinched. Come on.
Yeah. Mate, where did you play your junior footy? Obviously in that area, but which was your home club?
I 7 years old, I started playing like football for Taparoo, which were based at the North Haven Oval now. That's right. You guys know that. Mm-hmm. So Taparoo used to have that ground, and I used to live probably half a K away from there, if that, in between that oval and probably Fort Largs Police Academy. So I was down there at 7 years old, and I promise you, 7 years old playing in under 11s, went down there. Taparoo at the time had 4 teams in one grade under 11s. So Port Adelaide at the time, there was about 14 teams in the comp. For say under 11s, and Taparoo had 4 of them, which was unbelievable. I didn't really take much notice at the time, but looking back was crazy. There were so many kids down that way. Yeah,
that's incredible. Yeah, well, at least you didn't have to travel far to play.
No, I didn't, unless we played at Ingle Farm or Paraka, because we used to play against them guys back in those days. And I reckon I got 2 kicks in the first year I played. I promise you, that's, I remember going off the ground and saying I got a kick and thinking I was pretty happy and that's the truth because the kids were three years older, maybe 4 years older, and it just pushed me out the way.
Oh, that's a huge difference at that as a little kid then,
Yeah, so I ended up only playing 1 year then, and my next door neighbour wanted to go to Ethelston, and so I thought, well, I can't get a kick at Taparoo. We might have another go there. So went to Ethelston in 1971 when I was about 8. So I'm born late in the year, and ended up sort of, after a couple of years, won a couple of association awards out there, and my rivals were Bruce Abernathy, who played for Wingfield, then Rosewater, and Rossi Aegis, and a few of those guys. So Rossi played for Rosies, and I reckon Bruce was playing for Wingfield, then went to Rosewater. So, yeah, we basically grew up together, played against Tony Antrobus, David Robertson, who were both Ingle Farm. So we're all the sort of same era. So it was great memories, really. It was fantastic back in those days. There was so many teams to play against, and if you look for those sides now, the Mount Carmels were there. That was part of Rosewater, but they were a team, and Semaphore Park, they're no longer. Ethelston, my old team, no longer. There's obviously as the demographics change of population, probably about half of those teams are not around anymore, or even more, I'd say.
And so from your junior days, progressing obviously to Port Adelaide, 17s, 19s, and then making your league debut in 81?
Yeah.
Memories of your league debut?
Not great. I was basically taught, if I'm playing backlines, and Dad used to say this to me, like, well, if he doesn't get a kick, son, and you only get one or whatever, you've done your job. So I was a little bit of a stickler to that when I was younger. My first A-grade game was against Westies at Richmond Oval, and I stood, being the Butchie, Greg Phillips, being centre half back, Tony Giles on the flank, maybe a Peter Hoffner on the other side,
Yep.
Ivan Eckerman, Trevor Sorrell, I reckon,
Yes.
was full back then. I stood Dirk de Jong and Dexter Kennedy.
You're giving away a bit of height there.
Yeah, well, Dexter was pretty cool, mate, because he's a mate of mine because he played with Port Adelaide, and yeah, he looked after me, mate. He was
Good bloke, Dexter, pretty laid back.
Lovely man. So probably only troubled the scoreboard for touches about 6 or 7 times that day, but I just learned a lot from the guys I played with. Especially Greg Phillips. Just watched him because I ended up being a centre back myself for a while, but just sort of watched how he read the play. Greg Phillips was a great reader of the play. He could work out that he'd always stand his man, like he'd sometimes be 5 or 10 metres away from his man. And I'm going, how come he keeps on getting the ball all the time? So he was a very good reader of the play. Tony Giles was exceptional, sort of hard man, straight at it. Not a lot of skill, but straight through. Ivan Eckerman, very much the same. And obviously playing with Russell Evert and Brian Cunningham and being coached by John Cale. For the 3 people I've just said, if you want to look to people who, you want to learn off, pretty much just by watching them, watching what they do, was just a great learning experience.
Greg
I never
Phillips.
really had to ask a lot of questions, guys. I didn't really have to ask too many questions. What do I do here? I used to just watch people, and the way, say, Russell and Brian, who were Bucky, who were playing at the time, the way they looked after their injuries, the way they did this and that, and the professionalism just off the field in the training track, like having ice and doing the right thing, and then John Cale, the way he coached and how professional they were. So it didn't realise it at the time, but looking back, it was like it was like going to school, like the footy school, really. So yeah, great memories.
Some of the absolute greats, like Greg Phillips. Greg Phillips is the best reader of a ball I've seen. He's my best ever centre half back. And look, Bucky Cunningham, totally unique. He's the only player in footy history where he'd kick for goal depending on where he was on the ground. No one's ever done that since as a set shot. He was a freak. There's people out there just don't realise he's one of the all-time greats as well.
What an apprenticeship!
You're dead right. When you played with Bucky, he was he was my teacher at Taparoo High for a couple of years.
Yes.
Well, all the girls used to pervert his bum. All the 14-year-old girls. All they do, they didn't learn a thing. They used to pervert his bum. So I didn't really understand that at the time, but they thought it was all right. But Bucky, just a lovely guy, a gentleman, and it was as courageous as they came. So it was just again. Say those 3 names, 4: Greg Phillips, John Cale, Bucky Cunningham, Russell Evert. It's pretty easy to learn off. And I know Malcolm at Norwood had their John Wynns and Gary McIntoshes, and I don't worry, I respect those guys as well immensely. And so we're all very lucky.
Great era of footy. Now, so you played 4 games in 81. 82 established yourself and had a pretty unfortunate end of the year. And let's be honest, I will say as a Nord supporter, Greg Turnbull, 82 second semi, nowadays would have probably got 6 to 8 games. Back then, nothing. Go through that memories of that day, mate.
Yeah. I thought about that the other day, Matt, when you brought that up, because before I had a broken sesamoid bone. I had it that year, and also I got another one the next year. So I don't know if you noticed, I only played 2 games in 1983.
Yep.
Sesamoid bones is pretty much the bone that's about 2 inches below your big toe, or an inch below your big toe. And so before the match of 82, I had a couple of needles in the sesamoid bone just to deaden the foot, and because it was, I don't know, it's when you've got a broken bone in your foot, it's just a bit of a struggle. I'm not having a whinge here at all. To be honest, I should never have played, but I ended up, remember having the needle in my foot, I couldn't feel it in the first quarter. So when you're actually running and you can't feel your foot, it was ridiculous, to be honest. And I look back and I'm sort of half, in a way, I'm so glad I got knocked out. I'm knocked over by Greg Turnbull just to get me off the field, because I really felt, very ordinary and thinking, hell, what am I doing out here? And so it wasn't the second semi wasn't a great one, because I ended up at 3/4 time. I listened to the end of the game in hospital at Queen Elizabeth, and because Greg caved me cheekbone in.
Yes.
And so what they did, they actually cut my cheek to try and pull it out, but they couldn't pull my cheekbone out. They end up going up through my mouth and pushing it out from the inside. So, as I said to Malcolm the other day, and admired Greg Turnbull. Don't worry, I admire the Warriors, and he was one of those. But he was a bit cheeky the next time he saw me about a year or so later, and and looked up at me, and because he was only 5'10" or whatever Greg was, and he was a bit cheeky, and I've gone, okay.
6 weeks. I think that might be a bit light these days.
Yeah. Well, I remember actually watching it on the channel or whatever it was, the news on a Monday night, and I've just gone, wow, now I've seen it. Yeah, so you remember it, and anyway, that was football those days, and none of us were angels, and, I still treat, my foes in those days as good people. I treat people the way I'd like to be treated. When it came to football, though, maybe different.
We will get onto the famous. We will get onto the famous Victorian one in a minute. Let's go through. Look, 1984. It is one of the all-time great grand finals. But I will be honest. Nord were, and I know Neville was pleasantly surprised when you weren't his opponent that day. Thoughts with that? I get it. Let's stick to your original side. You're the dominant centre half back, etc. But not lining up on Nord's key player when you were their Port's best defender that day. Thoughts there, mate?
Yeah. It's a hard one, because I'm starting to think, because I played centre half back all year that year. I don't think I'd moved from centre half back one time in that year, if I remember. And all of a sudden in a grand final, you'd go to, you'd mess up your team. Surely sometimes you'd think that, Neville Roberts, an absolute star. Jim Michael wasn't a bad player either, mind you.
Yeah, Piano was a very good player.
Yep.
His son becomes an AFL player in a week's time. So,
yeah. And who's got him?
Probably the Crows.
Yeah, he'll be a father's son. He qualifies. Jim qualifies for his Nord games by 3 games for him to be a father-son selection. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little funny story there. I could start darting off. I used to, I'm not an arborist anymore. I still am, but I'm not in that game. And I was up at Sejuna School doing an arborist report, and had to have a chat with the headmaster there, and it was Jim Michael.
Yes.
So I hadn't seen him since, basically, because he probably retired around that time. Would that be right? Mid-80s?
Yes,
I think.
yeah, mid-80s, yeah. His last game was at the reserves premiership side. I think it was 80. It's either 85 or 86. I think it was 86, but yes, yep.
Yeah. So I remember sort of just touching base in the office there at the school, and I've had to do a report on their trees for safety and for fire and all that sort of thing. And so I ended up Jim come out, and I said, Jim, Martin Leslie. He said, oh, how you going, Martin? And really decent chap, as most of us are when we're off the field. And his assistant, his deputy, was coming along with us, and I said to her, can't remember her name now. I said, you know what? In a grand final, your headmaster squeezed me by the nuts. And he said, Jim, you didn't. Because we had a bit of a to do there, because he actually gave me a good squeeze, and I gave him a little bit of a clip, and that was really funny. That the interaction between her and him. You did not, Jim. Surely.
Don't worry, that's stored in the memory bank when I next speak to Jim, mate. Yes.
Yeah, no, we'll do that. Pass that one on when you see him, because I did bring that up, and but no, Jim was a good player. Yeah, I don't look back as that was a bad decision. I think what we did probably there in that grand final was, and Maxie James was a great footballer of the 70s. He played his first game of the year of A grade in the grand final. That wasn't fantastic, in my opinion. And we had, I don't know. Benny Harris was our fullback, and he done his ankle in the second semi. Yeah, but one other thing I think that we heard as well, I think that was pretty well done by Barmy. He came out with a little bit of oof and boof, and we retaliated. And it's always the ones who retaliate. So it was a fairly clever start with the Tim Evans and Craig Marm, all that sort of stuff going on. And I thought that we were always confident, and obviously Norwood were as well, to win the game. But I just thought, looking back, there was a lot of things that we did when it came to a bit of retaliation, that we, instead of actually just, hitting the ball and not worrying about the man, that we probably could have learned a bit about.
Yeah, there was no doubt Norwood did suck. And, that was the late Ian Stasnowski's idea. It was him and Greg Nicholson came up with that idea for Tim, and, it worked. And, we sacked Wayne Russell in a couple of times, and, it was very much a case of the retaliators got caught, and,
And I think also one of the last times that teams lined up in positions rather than
that was
across the green.
Time.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
Yeah, what for the that's right, for the
national anthem,
Yeah. Mate, that's correct. Yeah. No, sorry, I just Miguel's just walked out. She's just having a bit of a chat, and I said, "Oh well, you've had too much of a chat tonight. You can, was back in there."
Mate, moving along, 1986, mate, Port's best and fairest.
Yeah, the Bob McLean, actually.
Bob McLean.
Yeah, no, and Greg Anderson still thinks that I ripped him off. So you can talk to Greg about that and to say, do you reckon you should have won the '86? Well, he won the McGarry. So, and but I actually was up in Darwin playing football at the time, because I just wanted to, just to get away, have your holiday, and then probably try and stay fit at the same time. Not that well, it's funny. I went to Darwin. I reckon I drank bloody 12 beers every day at least, and then it came back 4 kilos lighter. So I came back in the like at the end of 80s. Yeah, end of 87, I was as fit as hell. Like because you go from Darwin where the air's so thick and you sweat so much, and we did do a little bit of training up there. And I came back and everyone said, "You've just been off on a training camp." I thought, well, yeah, okay. I've been off on a training camp, but it was a really good trip. And I was up there when they rang me and said that I won the vote, on the last vote of the night. So I still, when it comes up, I still say to Ando, it's just bad luck about that, isn't it, old boy?
Nothing wrong with that. Let's go to the night. Let's go to the night where you became the hero of South Australia. Go for that game, mate. G'day, Dermy.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's been, everyone, to be honest, like always says, "Oh, I remember you with, Derek Burton," and, and I just, well, that's sort of nice to be remembered for something, but sometimes you just go, well, I did play, a few games as well, but, the whole thing about playing for Portland and about playing for South Australia was about you playing for your, when you're playing for your club, you're playing for your mates and you're playing for the supporters. So a lot of people don't I don't know. People don't sort of say that too much. I used to play for my supporters because, you know what, I used to mix with them a lot.
The good
I was
old
usually
days,
up the
mate.
close.
Yeah, exactly. The good old days.
Yeah, we're really missing
very
that
much
these
so.
days, aren't we? Yep.
Yeah. So I know Gary McIntosh, I had, you know, quite a few beers back in the day with, and just a sort of guy that I'd love to play football with every time I played. But he's the sort of guy who's the same. He's the same. He's, you know, I used to play for the people who rolled up. And so that was it. You know, when you're playing for your state, well then, and she's on, well then she's on. You know, and the thing is that if someone's going to, you know, have a crack, well, you know, you're playing centre half back. You know, so you're a pillar of defence. What are you going to do? Roll over, or are you going to have a crack? And so that's what I did, but I did it for my team, and I did it for my mates, and I did it for the supporters, and I did it for South Australia. And if you got that sort of going with you, surely that's enough.
Oh, look, I think it was great. I think Dermot Brett and he just thought he was going to intimidate this guy, and this guy won't do anything. And you've given him back more than what he got, and I thought it was great that it put him back in his spot, exactly where he should have been.
Yeah, and I was lauded for all that and all that sort of stuff. But I remember one of my teammates, and I won't say his name, I don't disrespect this guy, but his name won't come up, and he said, "Oh, geez, I'm glad you did that because I wouldn't have done that." I've just gone, "Yeah, well, I'm glad I fucking stood him then." Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
You know, that's because I would have liked, you know, if you put your body on the line, all you're asking is the other 17 or 18 blokes that's on the team do the same. You know, isn't that all you ask for?
Oh, couldn't agree more.
Yep.
That's playing for the correct reason, not the dollar, playing for the correct reason. Look, Matty.
Yeah, well, the dollar wasn't so good at the time, so
No,
it didn't really.
A few drinks at the end of the game, and that's about it.
Matty, I do want to ask you about a famous game. Look, obviously a game which a lot of different emotions, etc. But look, and then how Port Adelaide handled it immediately, how Foss and Jack handled it immediately afterwards, and all that side. You know, Jack handled it to go to Foss's, but the Anthony Williams game. Your memories
okay,
there.
my memory of that. All right, you want my memory of the Anthony Williams game? So Anthony's one of the nicest people I ever met. So what happened that was in 1988.
Okay,
so back in the early 1980s, late 70s, early 1980s, I grew up and played a lot of junior football with Stephen, especially.
Yep.
Then I played 30 B grade games, 30, 40, I can't remember now, to try and break into that team of the the early 80s at Port Adelaide. It won 3 in a row. And spent a lot of time with Anthony and a lot of time with Stephen. And we used to go up to Murray River and do a lot of skiing together. Anthony was the sort of guy that if you ever had a problem, he'd say, just give me a call. Not that I, needed to too much, but he was great with working on people's cars and that sort of stuff. I was living in Woodville, living in the same street at the time as same street as David Granger, because I was looking after my sister's house at Windsor Avenue, Woodville, for a year because they were running a deli, and it was my last year in Adelaide. And David was a mate of mine. David was a misunderstood sort of person, but anyway, we won't go there. But I was down the Arndale shopping centre, and it was about lunchtime on a Friday, the day before the Norwood game. And I heard on the radio, because they had the news on, and I was just doing my shopping at Arndale. And I heard that the guy had been squashed by the brick wall at Glenelg South or whatever it was. Yep. And I've, redoing his house, and I've just gone, and I've just just as a flash, and then I just thought, nah, couldn't have been. So anyway, I went home and got a message. It was a message on my phone, which is the old days. You had to press the button to listen to the message.
The answering machine, yeah.
Yeah, and it was my partner, and she said, Anthony's gone. I'm just going, wow. Do you know what? I reckon that day against Norwood, I had a pretty good year at 88. As far as I remember, I think they was, which was unusual for me because I used to give the umpires a fair bit of cracking on the field, but I was in the top 5 or 6 that they thought would win the Brownlow, and I knew I had no chance because I used to give the umpires a fair bit of crack, and but the good part in those days, they used to give it back to me, and and carry on, play on.
Yep.
So that night, I didn't sleep. I just thought, I just didn't sleep. I went to the Norwood game and again thought I was ready. I had an ordinary one. I stood Craig Kelly.
Yeah.
I reckon we used to swap. I used to play centre half back. This day I played centre half forward, but I was pretty ordinary. I reckon I'm just guessing. Not too many touches. Craig was a good player, and I'd probably be way better off playing centre half back, and he was centre half forward. But anyway, I was fairly ordinary. But we all went back to the Williams house that night, and I've got to say it was a bit of a dream. It's something that you just go, some guys, or George Fiarchi made his career out of that game.
Yes, it changed his whole career, very much so. Late inclusion and was probably best on ground, and in a back started off the whole, him and Delaney, the combination from that day, which is quite incredible.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin.
That is true, and Joe was in '88, and George grew so much. He was playing in '87 as well. He played in the final of 2 in '87, and George, I've often said, we'll go. Sorry about leaving Anthony, but one of the loveliest men you'd ever meet in your life. Yep. But George, George was the sort of guy that. You admired the way he played. Sometimes I call him the biggest player in the arse of all time. I mean, but the good part about George, he would, I won't say that to stir him if he ever hears this, but every time I took a mark, because I'd rather, if you take a mark in the back lines, because it's just come your way, give it off and let a runner go with it, because that's what the opposition don't want. So George was always there every time. So he was, I think in the '88 grand final when we beat the Bays, I reckon I slipped it off to him, 3 or 4 times because he was always there. And if rather than me going back and taking my time and wondering who am I going to kick it to, he's straight there and bang, away you go and get it right back at him. Do you know what I'm saying?
So of course you were all Australian in 1988 as well. Yeah. So and a premiership year. So great memories there, mate.
Yeah, all good. I just needed to go. I think, you admire Macca for just being the Norwood man. And the thing is, because I'm sure Macca's a bit the same. I haven't spoken to him for a fair while, but I know next time he would be exactly the same. I just needed to. I'd lived in the Port. I played for Port. I worked in the Port, and that's what I'm saying. I needed to sort of to try something different, and the main reason I left, and the last year I had premiership All Australian, but I needed to go and play against the best players every week. That's the only reason I left. I would have done way better financially if I stayed in Adelaide, because I had a lot of contacts who wanted to set me up in business and, bottle shops and, I had a lot of people, but the thing is I just needed to go and play against the best players. And then, like Graham Corns wrote in the paper, he should have gone to a better team. Well, I didn't have any choice. I got drafted. And if I waited another year, guys, I was going to the end of my tether because I was 26 when I played my first game over there. And every week, especially in the second year, because I missed bloody 8 or 9 with my shoulder in the first year, but every week I was playing against a bloke that I'm going, oh, here we go. There was a time there, and I just said to me, Mrs. Anay, and she didn't really give a stuff about footy too much, She supported me, but she wasn't really a football sort of girl.
Yep.
I said to her, do you know, in the last 6 weeks I've stood Gary Ablett Senior, because I went to the halfback flank to stand him. I said, Dermot Brereton. It was Danaher, Terry Danaher, I thought was an absolute star. Buddy, Stephen Kernahan, Stuart Lowe, they just, and Wayne Carey, because he was playing them days, and that's 6 weeks in a row. And, as I used to say, you didn't need an alarm clock to wake up on a Saturday morning, you just go, bing, here we go, but that was the reason I went away. And I know I played for, a lowly side there for a while. But you pick yourself against the best. And that was what I wanted to do. But you know what? Geez, I missed Port Adelaide when I was up there. Yeah. I really did. Because, they were all my mates and stuff. But I just thought, oh, well, you've got an opportunity to play against the best players in the land.
Absolutely.
Every week. And that's why I left. So, yeah. But, no regrets, fellas. No regrets.
Absolutely. So between 1981 and 88, you play 150 games for Port Adelaide. You captained them in a premiership in 88 with a bit of a star-studded lineup. I'm just looking at the team right now. You move up to Brisbane. You go from a traditional club in Port Adelaide where it's very tight-knit. Everybody's sort of on the same page to a new venture up into Brisbane with not a lot of history behind it. Just explain what that was like.
Couldn't have been any more different. Like, there's so many things I could say about that. Just say that the trainers, even though there was a couple of them that knew their football, but some trainers had no idea. You know when you go to a football club, like, I'm not saying they had no idea how to train, but they had no idea about football because they had to drag these people in. And, when you're laying on the couch or on the bench getting a massage and the guys will be telling you, and I had Ted McMahon at Port Adelaide, he was still there in the 40s, when he, Ted McMahon's a legend of Port Adelaide, he was, a trainer in the 40s and he was still the trainer in the early 80s, so the stories those people can tell you and, about the ghosts in the room and who's around you and that sort of stuff was fantastic. So totally different. Up there, new team, change rooms were ordinary. Sort of a bunch of players. A lot of them are still friends of mine today. Probably only 3 or 4 I stay in touch with, but a lot of guys up there as well who were on there probably the last couple of years of football and saw an opportunity to make some reasonable sort of money and maybe didn't put in what you would have liked as a teammate, it's no names there as well, but it was a very different situation. I remember going to a game in 1990 and we still had rodeos next door to Carrara. And rodeos and unbelievable where I'd sort of get to the game and there was just fairy floss and donuts smell instead of pies and beer. Do you know what I'm saying? It was so different. Ran out the game against Collingwood in 1990. There was 20,000 people there, and I reckon we had 2,500 supporters to their 17,500. Yeah. So it was a lot different, but times changed. When we got to the Gabba. Up in Brisbane, things were a little bit different. And, then all of a sudden, recruiting was a bit different. we started to get some players such as Chris Scotts and Craig McRae's, Nigel Lappin's, this sort of thing. Where back in the day we basically had 60 on our list, and they used to drag in these kids from country Melbourne. And the poor buggers, there were 7 of them living in a house on the Gold Coast. And they were only making $7,000 a year at the time, and their rent was paid, but they were eating baked beans on toast every day.
Wow. How times have changed.
Oh, you go back and ask that question. These guys were getting paid nothing and expected to perform. And it was just a real, I was obviously in a luckier situation. But I didn't realise that until I asked some questions. And so, times did change. And so, we were called the Humphrey B Bears. Sometimes we called ourselves that. But at the end of the day, every time you go out and play, because you might get a busted up body for playing, you got to play for your mates. You just got to play for your mates, and that's what we did. I've got some really good friends from that era: Johnny Gastev, Mark Zanotti, and David O'Keefe. There's a lot of some guys I admired. A lot of guys. Roger Merritt. They're really sad that he had a stroke up there, and it was really disappointing. But there's a lot of good people go through. It was just the time, We had Christopher Scase as our boss, and we know what happened there.
Yep.
But things have got to start from somewhere, don't they?
Yep. Absolutely. So as you mentioned previously, you were the number 1 draft pick in '86, but you didn't get to play your first game until 1989. Bit of a baptism of fire at St Kilda down in Moorabbin.
Yeah, I remember some guy sent me a text. He said, "Oh, look, I kicked 10 on you." I said, "Well, yeah, no, I didn't. That's rumour. No, he kicked 6 up to me to 3/4 time, but they also kicked 24 to get for the game. He kicked 9 for the game. I got moved to 3/4 time, and they tried to put me somewhere else. But let me tell you, when it's coming down that many times, he kicked 130 odd that year." And I remember hearing that some of the Bears hierarchy were going, well, you wait till, because it's very Victorian, South Australian back in those days, because as it probably still is. And I can guarantee you, look this up. I heard through a couple of good trainers, they overheard some guys going, wait till buddy Silvani stands him next week, because they played Carlton the next week. And wait till he stands him, and then, we'll see who the best, well, I wasn't a fullback anyway. I was in the fullbacks bumhole. But Silvani got 12 goals, 7 kicked on him by Lockett. And so, but when I heard that about, some of my own, guys at the club, not my teammates, but I've just gone, really? Okay. If the killer's going to kick 24 in those days, you reckon Lockett's going to kick a few?
They're going to go through him a few times.
Absolutely.
You played under a few coaches there, Marty? Yeah,
I did. It was very weird. Peter Knight's lovely guy. Really, really hard coach in the ways of the training and stuff. Probably compare him to John Cale, who got you fit, and he was more of a horse trainer sort of style coach. He'd sometimes tell you to get off the field because you look good, and you'd go, "No, I want to stay on," as get off. And Peter Knights was he was pretty brutal. We trained for 3 hours and do a lot of one-on-one, and you'd be really knackered and have a lot of bloody cork thighs, and even from training. So Robbie Walls is very similar. Very, very clued up coach. But Jesus, I think I was probably my second half of my career up there. So just trying to stay in the park at training sometimes. We had more injuries at training than we did in the game. I think he was just trying to harden us up. But I'm thinking, no, I'm hard enough at the moment. I don't need to, go through too much of training. I'd rather save it for the weekend. I don't mind doing the miles, but not the heavy clashes at training. But yeah, we did. But as I said, it had to start from somewhere, and that's where they started from. And
Normie Dare with a South Australian link there, West Torrens as well, mate.
yeah, no, Normie was a good guy. It was best and fairest of the year that Normie coached.
Yep.
Just a good guy. He's. I don't think he wanted to be the coach, to be honest. I think he was more suited to an assistant coach. But all those guys, they were good guys. All the coaches that I had there. Peter Feltham took over from.
Paul Feltham. Yep.
Sorry, Paul Feltham took over from Knightsy, and we won 5 out of 7 games. He coached for 7 games. We won 5 of them. Yeah. So, but he got sacked.
Pretty unlucky not to get the gig after that.
Yeah.
I would have thought so. But it was politics in footy, guys. Politics in footy. That's what happens. And I knew he was going to get the sack beforehand because someone told me. They said, "What do you think of him?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know him that well personally, but we just won 5 out of 7 games, and this was a teammate of mine at the time who was a bit older than me. Had a bit of influence, and he said, "Yeah, well, I don't like him." So, and I'm retiring in about a month. I don't know that, but he's going to be gone before I do, before I am. So I'm going, yeah, okay. So that's what happens. I was there for football, not for the other bullshit.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And mate, in 1990, you win the Brisbane club champion.
Yeah.
Winning it at 2 different clubs. Just explain how that feels.
Yeah, it feels it probably feels like good, when you get it, and like as all of us do, we have our we have our moments where we achieve a few things, and if you want to just hang on to that medal for the rest of your life and just or move on and try and achieve something else, that's the whole thing about it, really. It's it's good, and it's good to look back on. But it's like, oh well, I've got some bruises and a bit of blood, out of winning it. So, okay, thanks very much. Appreciate it, and love the teammates and who supported me and stuff, and sort of move on.
Yep.
And
you pitted yourself against the best as well. So that's a feather in the cap for sure.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I don't. I'm not playing it, stuff down. It's just stuff. This is a little bit unusual. I don't sort of rave on about myself too much, and I was just seriously happy to play football. Very, very a lot of gratitude to play football in that era. Just coming back and being in Brisbane and coming back to playing for some state sides with the likes of the Michael Ashers and the Gary McIntoshes and the Mark Naileys and the Craig Badleys and the Stephen Kernaghan's and the Tony Halls and the Greg Phillipses and the Russell Johnsons. That was, for me, again, talking about state footy, don't worry about Dermy, just playing with the guys that I played with. We look at their side and you go, "Phew, that's going to be tough to beat." And we beat them quite a few times.
We had a great record there for a while. Now, I did get a message at one stage, Chris Brown from the Nord History Committee, and I am actually thanking you on behalf of the Nord History Committee, but a message and contact you. Now, let's go for it. You just explain it completely, your link with not only the Nord Footy Club, but actually virtually the origin of football, right back to the beginning of footy in South Australia. Go, matey.
Yeah, okay. Well, Topsy Waldron. Wow, when I was younger, I heard the name, and it was sort of, my grandfather, who was his grandson, lived with us after his wife died. My grandma lived with us in the 1970s, and before he passed away. He lived with us for about 6 or 7 years. So his name was Norm. His actual name at the time was Norm Wilkins, because he changed his name, and we are thinking, and it's all, he is his grandson. And my sister's gone through all of it. She did 15 years of the family tree, but he changed his name to Wilkins because I think the pressure on my grandfather was probably a little bit over the top, because I think I think Topsy Waldron was, like an icon figure at the time. My grandfather was born in 1902, and I'm not too sure if he was willing to maybe hold the mantle, or because my grandfather's son, which is my uncle, he was nicknamed Topsy because of the bloodlines, you see, and so my uncle Norm played one game for Port, and my grandfather Norm, he played 11 for Port Adelaide. So Topsy is my grandfather's grandfather. Yeah. So my sister's got it all, there. And if you looked at my grandfather, and if you looked at Topsy, you can tell. We're not hanging on to anything there. It's just my sister, she did all the stuff. My sister spent 15 years doing a family tree, and it was unbelievable. I've got a book of my mother's side and my father's side, and it's a big folder of about 3 inches thick, and she's done all this. I just could not believe it, that she's given me one and my other sister one to pass on to our kids. So my sister Patricia, Pat, she's done a massive job. But no, Topsy Waldron, is my great-great-grandfather.
Oh, and he's a legendary figure. His record, if you look through, was considered in some circles the player of the colonial, best player in the colonial back then. It's what got called, and his record is quite incredible.
Yeah, it is, and it's a long time before my time, and it's just nice to be part of the old Norn history as well, because Norn's a team that I always admired and respected as well.
Oh, we think we should have got you under the great grandfather, whatever you want to call it, rule, mate.
Yeah. I think my mum would have torn strips off me if I went that way. Yeah.
Mate, obviously some fantastic state of origin teams as well. I'm just having a little bit of a look over the some of the teams, and playing with the Kernahans and the McGuinnesses and the Tony Halls, and mate, it's just a golden era of SA footy, and to be part of it would have just been amazing.
Yeah, no, it was, and also every time you rolled up and you're playing Glenelg, and I'm standing Kernahan, which I did most of the time, and you've got Tony Hall, who I stood once Kernahan left. You've got Tony McGuinness and Chris McDermott, and they had, every team had some really good footballers, and so to come back and play with them all at the same time was it was just a pleasure, really. I remember I'd already played a few state games. I'd gone back to Brisbane, and to be honest, we had, we probably didn't have a really good full side. We probably had 12, 13 maybe players who were good enough to play AFL or VFL at the time. Mm-hmm. But then you come back to South Australia and you train for state of origin. The ball wouldn't touch the ground. Yeah, the ball just didn't touch the ground. And then you go, how much fun's this? Where when you go back to your AFL team, and where it was a fair bit different. So no, it was just a pleasure. It was just a pleasure. You go out, look around the ground before the balls bounce, and you've got absolute stars on the Victorian side, and you've got absolute stars in your team. So you're going, okay, here we go, bounce the ball, let's see what happens. And it was good fun. That's what I try to say to young kids, when I was coaching them, or some A-grade countrysides where I've coached, like just be wanting to play against the best, like that's the whole thing. It's just like, if you're, I'm really nervous. Oh, great, because if you're not, it means nothing to you,
So what have your
Right.
footy involvements been, or since you've finished up your career, mate?
Oh, pretty much country stuff. Mainly when I retired from Brisbane, I was cooked, sort of physically and mentally. Physically, my back was gone, so I had an
Yep.
operation on my back. I only played 4 games in my last year. I had 4 epidurals in my back in the last year I played, just to try and keep me on the park, but that didn't really cut the mustard. So I had 2 prolapse discs, which I had operated on a couple of years after I retired. So I was just away from footy, and I suppose living in Brisbane, it was pretty easy to do. It was just easy to be away. I'd probably pop out to training every now and then, see a couple of teammates, and just bob in and bob out. But I was sort of over it.
Yep.
I was over it. So I just went to work for Qantas in the cargo area up there in Brisbane, and it was normal, just dad. I had a couple of young kids under 5 years old, and yeah, just a dad. And I didn't really. I remember a couple of times they got me on the radio, to commentate a couple of games, and I think I maybe made out pretty well, but I wasn't watching much football. I was commentating Hawthorn in the. When was that? Late 90s, when they weren't that flash, and I probably didn't know half the bloody players out there. So I wasn't taking a lot of notice, of footy at the time. And it was a nice break when I came back to South Australia, and I started coaching the Barossa, coached Newry for a couple of years in the Barossa there. And then, marriage split up, so I ended up coming over to Port Lincoln to follow my kids and be close to my kids. So I coached a couple of country, up in near Cummins Way, team like Yolanda for a couple of years, and a couple of years at Boston's in Port Lincoln, and then after that, probably 10 years of juniors. Just the 15s and 17s and that sort of stuff. So. So I've sort of, that finished about 2 or 3 years ago, and so I still do a little bit of sprint training and coordination, which I learned from Billy Noonan. I don't know if you know know Billy.
Yes. Famous fitness person. Yep.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of sprint training with Billy, and he taught me so much in a small amount of time. So I used that, because I was, obviously never that fast, but I became adequate through Bill, and so I teach that to young kids, when they need it as well. You do a 1-on-1 or a group of 6 or something like that. But a bit low, pretty low key. Don't need too much to, don't need much headlines. Luckily enough, I had a bit in my time. Had me 15 minutes of fame.
Mate, absolute fantastic to hear from you tonight, mate. We've covered a whole range of topics today, but mate, we could have gone on forever there. That's some fantastic insight in not only into your career, but obviously since finishing up as well, mate. Thank you very much for your time tonight, and we look forward to catching up with you at some stage.
Greatly appreciate it, matey.
Thanks, Malcolm. Thanks, Peter. No, it's been good. Thanks for having me on. Fantastic.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, boys.
We've just had Martin Leslie give us a good 45 minutes of gold, really, along the way. Interesting to as Nord men that we are, how intertwined Nord and Port have been over the years, and how they got on so well, pretty much off the ground, but on the ground it was on like young and old.
Yeah, but both clubs respecting each other.
Yes.
Look, it was purely by chance where the link with Marty came up with Topsy Waldron and that, and just, fascinating. And his career, his huge respect for, Phillips, Bucky Cunningham,
yes.
Greg Phillips, Bucky Cunningham, and Jack Cale comes out, real Port Adelaide blood through and through. and then up at Brisbane. So,
Yes.
yeah, fascinating.
And we talked obviously about some of his state of origin exploits. Playing with Abernathy, Francis, Jarman, Kernahan, McDermott. The names go on.
You could certainly tell how much state footy meant to Marty.
Yes,
well and true,
absolutely.
Came through.
And the 88 premiership against Glenelg, we touched on it briefly. Obviously, a big year in 88 for Port Adelaide. But some of the names that are on that list is fantastic. And look, I open it up to everybody that's listening. Go out and check these teams, because you'll sit there and go, "Wow, the halcyon days of the SNFL were thick and fast through that area."
Still, Victorians don't realise how good South Australian footy and how deep the talent base was.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Happy days.
Today we start off with happy birthday to Kerry O'Keefe, Australian leg spinner, 1971 to 77.
Probably more known for a commentary than his own cricket career.
Yes.
Skull. We're lucky enough to have him at Payneham for a couple of times. We actually won ABC Club of the Year at one stage, and the prize was Kerry O'Keefe as a sports night. So, very intelligent person thought of changing our name from the Knights to the Dukes, Pete.
Yes.
Yes, we won't rule who that was. Named after Keith Duke, who was secretary for Payneham for 62 years. Payneham were the first club as their moniker, named after a family.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, fantastic little bit of history there. You're right, Kerry O'Keefe, you're always listening on the radio or the TV for that little nugget that he'll bring in each time, and he's just got a story that would make most club nights, when they have these sports stars there, that would make it very interesting.
Nah, he's gold.
This week in 1976, O.J. Simpson gains 273 yards playing for Buffalo against Detroit. That's pretty much like, say, a Dangerfield gaining 1,000 yards.
It's pretty incredible. Of course, a famous name in lots of ways. Yeah.
More known for his off-field exploits.
Yes.
A very, very good player in his own right.
Yes.
But, some indiscretions off-field kept it interesting for sure.
We'll move on.
Mate, we will move on. 1979, I'm not sure if you've heard of these guys. You may have. John Madden, Pat Summerall, broadcasting the NFL. They actually broadcast their first game and then paired together for 22 years.
I will admit your knowledge on American sport is a mile in front of mine.
No, not a problem.
So
these guys were the number one team when it came to commentary. John Madden, obviously a player, and then a coach in his own right. Very, very famous pairing. But got me thinking about famous pairings in Australian commentary, and I think the one that comes up the most is Bruce McAvaney and Dennis Committee.
Yeah, they are probably the leading one. Look, old SANFL days, Wally May, Ian Aitken, Max Hall, comment Wally May, no comment, great comment, good comment Wally.
Yes.
Are famous around. And look, Peter Marker and Ian Day were pretty, were a very strong and well-respected combination. But, yeah, I think Bruce and Dennis are probably the
gold standard for sure. This week in 1989, David Boone scores 200 against New Zealand at the Wacker.
Yeah, Booney very, remember also his record from on the plane from Australia to England on a different subject, but Boone was a fantastic player. And,
200 at the Wacker, I mean, that's a pretty fair effort. So, I know it's a fast track and those were the days, but New Zealand are no slouches, that's for sure.
Booney was a fair player.
Also in this week in 1989, I couldn't leave this out because I had to add it in. Sachin Tendulkar scores 50, but, he's scored a million of them over his career. But he did it at 16 years and 214 days, Malcolm. It's a record.
Look, I think he's, I'm nearly 60. I think of purely technique. I'm not saying he's the best player, but I'm saying purely technique-wise, I think Tendulkar is my number one.
Yep, for sure. And fantastic at 16 years of age. You don't see that very often these days. And very topical for the moment, mate. This week in 2014, we're going to talk about soccer or the world game. Lionel Messi becomes the UEFA Champions League all-time scorer.
He could become the World Cup all-time scorer as well.
He could indeed.
Yeah, look, one of the all-time greats.
And to finish off, again on the World Game, Diego Maradona passed away this week from a heart attack, age 60. 91 caps for his country, 86 of them as captain. FIFA Player of the 20th Century. Again, you're in the GOAT category, aren't you?
Hand of God, that famous World Cup.
Yep.
Look, one of the all-time greats, and
probably lost a little bit too early.
Yeah, interesting life as well. Probably.
Absolutely. All right, mate. Let's scoot into the big finish.
Extra time. Big finish.
To kick us off, we'll head back to the cricket again, but this time the one-dayers, the ODIs, Hazelwood named captain.
Yeah, I thought that was bizarre. Look, it was either Steve Smith is Australian vice captain at the moment.
Yep.
Well, either he captains after being vice captain, surely he's captains. He has captained a test match back, so it's not like
it's somewhat fresh.
Wow, and all that. I just thought it was incredible. Smith either captain. If Smith didn't captain, it had to be Carey.
Yep.
I thought that was weird.
David Warner obviously looking to get his ban lifted. I think that's been successful. Maybe the same thinking with Smith.
Yeah.
Can't put him in that position.
Yeah, what's the point of lifting the ban if you're not going to make Smith captain? Well, why? Yeah, so
correct.
The
one-day series against England was a little bit of a whitewash. Too little, too late. A little, in some respects, for the 2020. I know it's a totally different format, but I think we went out there with a bit of intent to fix what had gone wrong in the 2020. But Travis Head up the order and batting brilliantly.
Yeah, he's certainly put his hand up now. He's going to be, and I think it queries Finch's selection more in the 2020. So Travis now, he's got his foot in the door well and truly to be opening the World Cup, next World Cup.
Yep.
Look, I think the series, was asking way too much of England 3 days after winning the World 2020. I don't think it's respecting the major championship. You're going to have that.
But that gets down to scheduling again.
Yeah, ridiculous.
And we talked about the scheduling a little bit earlier. You've got half-filled stadiums. The ODI had hardly any. I think they had a total of 47,000 across 3 venues. I mean, that's just not right. That's un-Australian.
10,000 at the G. Look, and those games didn't even count to the point system overall. So what in the hell was the reason?
Yep.
AFL, mate.
Darcy Fogarty, from a Crows point of view, signs an extension for 2 years. I think that's a pretty good move.
I think it's great. Like, let's be honest, the start of last year there was
murmurings.
I was well and truly one of them questioning whether he was going to be good enough. He took a big, significant step last year. Yep. Hopefully that continues.
I think he certainly put his hand up, and I think the training regime that Darren Burgess has got him on seems to be working.
Yeah. Well, look, Fisher McCasey as well.
Yeah. Have we pigeonholed him a little bit too harshly? I mean, I know we're a footy-centric town.
You've got to query. I know they've said that some other clubs had him as high as well.
Yep.
But, if he hadn't have gone number 6 and it had been a selection in the 40s and 50s, and look, there's obviously, his father's pretty seriously ill.
Yep.
Some other troubles as well.
Yep. Hey, when your mind's not on the game, it's very hard to perform at your best. I mean, it doesn't matter what sport it is. If there's something going on in the background, it does make it hard.
Look, best wishes for the kid.
Absolutely, and I'd like to see him back in Crows colours. Just a little side note on that. All but one of the Crows players came back for day one of pre-season. Now, the 1 to 4 year players are required to return. Everyone but one for the Crows. I think that's a big tick for the program.
Yeah, we just wait and see now. Hopefully there'll be some more progression.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's still too many honest battlers on the Adelaide list.
Yep.
I couldn't believe Murph. I think it was terrible list management that Lockie Murphy had another contract.
Yep.
But a fair few other clubs have decided, well, no, that was a mistake and have gone bang.
Yep.
I'd much rather have James Rowe than Lockie Murphy.
Yep.
That's a personal opinion.
But just good to see the players all getting back.
Yeah.
Port only had 10 or 11 of their senior players.
Wait and see.
Wait and see.
Yep.
All right. Mate, we'll stay with the AFL. Look, a little bit of a pressure test. We've got 4 new coaches this year. Rossi, Lyon, Chris Scott, Clarkson, and Kingsley. Who's under the biggest amount of pressure?
Ooh, Scott's at a big club at Essendon.
Yep.
Ross Lyon,
Well, because of the circumstances.
You reappoint a coach and within 100 days decide to sack him.
Yes.
So that the whole weirdness of that.
Yep.
I think Clarkson's probably at North Melbourne. I think he'll be. And I think Adam Kingsley at GWS. GWS are nearly at the.
Well, they turned over a lot of their list, so they're almost starting again.
It's going to be a nightmare to coach GWS with the lack of stability over the long range. So, wait and see.
Interesting to see that the ex-captain had put his name down for the pre-season draft.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting to see that list come out and his name was on it. So, Phil Davis I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
Interesting to see whether he gets picked up somewhere else.
Yeah, it's weird. I thought he was continuing on at GWS. I did read that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tennis, mate.
Yeah, mate. We talked with Dylan from Tennis SA a few weeks ago, and we thought we'd circle back, and some rounds have been played now. So I wanted to have a little bit of a look at some of the tables. In the State League Women at the moment, we've got Glenlee sitting at the top of the table, Athelston sitting second, Seacliff third, and Happy Valley sitting fourth for the Women's State League at the moment. They've played 5 or 6 games. Obviously, here in Adelaide over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of rain delay, so there would have been some matches that would have been made up possibly on a Friday night, I would assume. Moving over to the men's, Peak Gardens sitting top of the table there, Seaside second, Glenlee third, and Teacher Gully sitting fourth. Dylan did explain that a few of these clubs would be around the mark, so it looks like they've got themselves off to a pretty good start to the season. You know, there's a couple of teams there. There's probably only a couple of wins between third and about eighth at the moment, so it's tightening up a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see how it progresses over the next 4 or 5 weeks. Then it's into finals for them as well.
It's progression, which full credit to the veterans cricket this week that they managed to get all games played.
Yes.
There was a lot of games rescheduled, and Anthony Telfer and his band of merrymen there and ladies, fantastic effort there.
Being obviously predominantly hard court, they're going to find time during the week, but we haven't had too many dry days at the moment, that's for sure. We'll endeavour to get somebody on from a couple of these teams over the next couple of weeks, mate, for sure, and especially leading into finals. We move on to grade cricket. Now, I've left this in your hands because I'm the man that does a little bit of research on some of these topics and some of these ladders and bits and pieces. Like, I couldn't find a damn thing on grade cricket.
At the moment, my cricket, which has worked previously the last few years, look, it's gone to a different system. Better be careful legally.
Yep.
Let's just say I think it's been bizarre.
Okay.
And if I'm just saying bizarre, I'm being very, very polite.
I've been getting the Sunday Mail looking for the results. There's a little blurb there that says that they can't produce those results. I thought I might have a little bit of luck online that someone might have been able to post something. So we'd love to do a cricket roundup for the grade cricket, Premier League cricket, but we don't have anything to report at the moment, mate.
Look, I will chase it up.
Yep.
Because there are a couple of people who
will know,
have got the gurus into it. Look, but it's crazy.
Yep.
The system is inefficient. It's not working. Let's be honest. Bang. Yep. But, it's a little bit more complicated.
We'll leave it there.
Yes. Baseball, mate.
Yeah, mate. While we're sticking with the local ladders at the moment for the state leagues, Hanley and Grange sitting top of the table, played 7, won 6, 1 loss, which is a damn good start. Woodville sitting second, Sturt third, West Torrens fourth, and Goodwood fifth at this stage. Yeah, pretty close table. The top, there's 13 teams. The top, let's say 9 are pretty tight. As far as wins and losses go, once again, weather permitting, I'm assuming that there's been a few washouts over the last few Saturdays, so it's been a bit harder to get those games in. I'm not 100% sure as to if they do have to make those up at some stage, but I can follow that up as we go along. But moving on from that, we're going to have a little bit of a look at the Adelaide Giants local team here. It's their first home game this week.
Yeah, I'd love to know the reason why they've played so many away. It's not like the stadium's being redone down there at West Beach. So, yeah, I can't understand quite why they've had so many series away so far. So,
it is an interesting one. I mean, they come up against the Melbourne Aces, so we've got the SA Vic rivalry on once again, starting tonight, actually, 7 p.m, but carrying on Friday and into Saturday as well, and then into Sunday. So it's a pretty jam-packed schedule that the Adelaide Giants have at the moment, and we'll see how they go.
Yeah, I admit I miss baseball at Nord. Yeah, I love baseball at Nord.
I had never got the opportunity to go, but it would have been fantastic. But I think I'm going to be actually heading out to a Giants game in round 5, it looks like, as well. So, yeah, might be able to report firsthand while we're down there. Yeah. Might even get a few player interviews as we go along.
Yeah, we might try.
That'd be fantastic. All right, mate, we've done it once again. We've come to another episode, to the end of another episode. We promise to do better as always. We've had fantastic guests today in Martin Leslie. We've covered a range of topics once again. And just before I go, mate, who's your tip for the AFLW Grand Final?
Brisbane.
I think Brisbane as well. So we'll see how that one goes. Mate, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to annoy you to get it on Foxtel on the cricket very quickly, Pete.
Will do, mate.
Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.